Since its inception in 1976, the term Mr. Irrelevant has always been widely celebrated by NFL fans. Being the last player taken in the NFL draft every year, one person always picks up the moniker that stays with them even after their playing days. For the fans, this player can represent so much, but above all else, they represent a chance. The last player selected may not ever make an impact on their team, or even play in the NFL, but there's always that chance, that slim chance, that they can beat the odds and show that they deserve to be in the NFL. Mr. Irrelevant can take all sorts of forms and could be any position imaginable, and I want to look at that in particular. In every year of the NFL draft, there's always been a first player and a last player taken at every position. For every Kyler Murray, there's always a Trace McSorley. For every Sammy Watkins, there's a Jeremy Gallon, so on and so forth. So strap on in, because I'm about to take you into the world of Position Irrelevant. For this first episode, I took a look at the last quarterbacks drafted in every draft dating back to 1936, and when I was looking at the stats, I couldn't help but be pulled in by the three names I'll be talking about in this video. These three players beat their predetermined odds and found a bunch of success in a position where only 32 players start at any given moment. Before we get to these three players, I want to give an honorable mention to a guy named Bill Kenny, who was drafted in the 12th round of the 1978 draft by the Kansas City Chiefs. He did earn a Pro Bowl nod in 1983, but for the rest of his NFL career, he was a fringe starter at best. So to keep things simple, I left him off. Now, on to the first. So yeah, the guy that everyone loves and everyone knew would be on this list, the one and only Ryan Fitzpatrick. Drafted with the 250th pick in the 7th round of the 2005 NFL Draft, the Magic Man himself is one of only 6 players to still be active from that draft, and one of only 3 to currently be signed to a team, the others being Aaron Rodgers and Richie Incognito. After this season, the journeyman QB will have earned at least $82 million from 9 different NFL teams, and although he doesn't have the Pro Bowl selection that our friend Kenny does, he does have a couple of things that are arguably more impressive: longevity and consistency. Not only has Ryan Fitzpatrick played for 16 seasons, but of those seasons he started in 7 or more games in 12 of them. The man only fully started 3 seasons, but his combination of readiness and pure happenstance led him to coming in year after year and replacing anyone that stood in his way. Even with all that said, what's still crazy to say is that even though he's turning 39 this upcoming season, you can't fully say he's done yet. From his 4-year stint in Buffalo, being the conductor behind memorable wins against divisional rivals, to his 10-6 season with the Jets, he's had seasons of great success. And even to this day, he could be named the starting quarterback of a Washington football team that has a strong chance of taking the NFC East divisional title. Will we ever run out of Fitzmagic? God only knows. But one thing we can all be reassured of is that from wild screams to wearing his teammates' clothes in press conferences, Ryan Fitzpatrick will always be remembered on and off the field. In a game where injuries happen all too often, the quarterback position is the one player above all else that is given the most caution and literal protection. Even with that said, injuries do happen to quarterbacks. And for our second late round pick, injuries define more than his own career. After an up-and-down college career at Indiana University, Trent Green was selected with the 222nd pick in the 8th round of the 1993 NFL Draft. Green's first 4 years after being drafted in the NFL weren't actually in the NFL. He spent those years getting cut by multiple CFL teams before joining the then Redskins at age 27. His first year was less than stellar, but after relieving fellow late-round pick and infamously injured man Gus Burrow, the St. Louis Rams decided to take a chance on him to revive their offense in 1999. The move did end up making way for the greatest show on turf, but Trent Green ended up being on the wrong side of that story. Early in a preseason game against the San Diego Chargers, Green went down with a horrific torn ACL that sidelined him for the rest of the 1999 season. Without Green, the Rams were forced to lean on a little-known quarterback named Kurt Warner, and the rest is history. Green stayed with the team until 2000, but was traded in the offseason to Kansas City, where he was given a second chance. From day one, head coach Dick Vermeil gave Green the green light, which didn't seem to pan out at first. His first season as the Chiefs starter yielded a 6-10 record and 7 more interceptions than touchdowns. His next season saw improvement across the board. Then finally, in 2003, at the ripe age of 33, Trent Green finally had his breakout year.
First and 10, 43, down the sideline for Tony Gonzalez. Interception touchdown. Now Green, he's going for the long one for Tennyson. He's got him at the 10, the 5, touchdown to Kansas City.
The Chiefs went 13-3 while Green had the second most passing yards in the league and a 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. His team ended up getting ousted by Peyton Manning and the Colts, but this marked the beginning of a 3-year window in which Trent Green was one of the top quarterbacks in the league. The next year the Chiefs did go under 500, but Green was again one of the top 10 passers in terms of yardage and touchdowns. The next year in 2005 was the last chance that Green, Vermeil, and these aging Chiefs had at making a push for the Super Bowl. The team went 10-6 behind Pro Bowl deserving quarterback play by Trent Green and a 20-touchdown season by Larry Johnson. But in the end, none of that was enough to even get the Chiefs into the playoffs. That year the Chiefs were in the same division as the 13-3 Denver Broncos and missed the cut for the wildcard spot by 1 game to the eventual Super Bowl champion Pittsburgh Steelers. After that season, Trent Green's career was defined and derailed by head injuries. In the 2006 season, Dick Vermeil was gone, Herm Edwards is in, and in the first game of the season, Green suffered a severe concussion on a late hit by Robert Gathers. The next year, Green was traded to the Miami Dolphins, where he was again the recipient of an awkward hit and another severe concussion. Green went on to play 1 more season before retiring at the age of 38. When you search for Trent Green on YouTube, 2 of the first 3 videos you'll see are of hits that he took. But what's more impressive, and what the clips don't show, is that he got up after those hits. After tearing his ACL in 1999, Trent Green went on to start 82 straight games, tied for 20th in NFL history. After being severely concussed at the age of 36, he came back 10 weeks later and finished the season as the starting quarterback. And even after getting quite literally knocked out at the age of 37, Green stayed in the NFL for 1 more year to finish his career with the team that he inadvertently affected the most. Anyone who has ever looked at a list of notable Raiders quarterbacks is going to be drawn to the names of Derek Carr, Ken Stabler, and Rich Gannon. But the last guy on this list is actually a Raiders quarterback that's right up there with those names. Enter Daryle Lamonica. Lamonica played at the University of Notre Dame for some less than stellar teams, so scouts didn't exactly seek out his talents. He was taken in the 12th round of the 1963 NFL draft by the Packers and the 24th round of the AFL draft by the Bills. Lamonica decided to sign with the Bills as he thought he'd get more playing time in the upstart team, but that ended up being far from the truth. In 4 years as a backup quarterback, Lamonica actually went 4-0, but in 1967 the Bills decided to trade him to the Oakland Raiders, where his career would take off. In his first year as a Raider, Daryle Lamonica went from an okay backup to quite literally the best player in the league. He led the team to a 13-1 record and led the AFL in passing touchdowns with 30, while adding 4 extra on the ground. And to add a cherry on top of the Cinderella story, Lamonica won AFL MVP and won the Raiders an AFL championship. 1968 didn't see our boy Lamonica get any of the accolades he did his previous season, but he did have his most memorable moment of his professional football career during this season, and only half of the nation got to see it. KTO talks about this game in more detail in a separate video, so I'll link that below. But the game in question came to be known as the Heidi game. In a late season rivalry game against the highly competitive and talented New York Jets, the Raiders were down by 3 with the ball and just over a minute left when all of a sudden, this happened.
The network televising the game made the classic blunder. NBC turned off the uncompleted game in favor of a kiddie special called Heidi.
The East Coast coverage of the game switched over to the premiere of a 4TV movie called Heidi. While most of those East Coast fans were either furiously calling up NBC or just assumed that the Jets had the game in the bag, Lamonica led the Raiders on a comeback drive that ended in a 43-yard touchdown pass to Charlie Davis. I should mention that Lamonica earned the nickname the Mad Bomber during these years for his gutsy playstyle. Throughout his career, Daryle always hovered around the 50% completion percentage, with his career average leaning just under that halfway point. The guy threw bombs, which is why I kinda like to compare him to Brett Favre. Both players immediately impacted their new teams once they were traded and established themselves as pure winners. They also hovered around lower completion percentages for their time and made themselves known as quarterbacks that weren't afraid to sling the ball. LaMonica's 1969 season was even better than his 67 as he pulled off a full Jameis Winston and then some. That year he led the AFL in yards, touchdowns, and interceptions, all while on his way to another AFL MVP and another AFL championship. Over his last 5 years with the Raiders organization, LaMonica earned a couple of Pro Bowl nods, but during those years, Coach John Madden leaned more towards the run game, which made LaMonica less a part of the offense. Eventually, in 1973, just as Raiders legend Tom Flores handed down the torch to the Mad Bomber, LaMonica handed his torch to the Snake, otherwise known as Ken Stabler.
Just a bunch of dropouts.